Ali, can you go to the first screen, please? Okay, this is the first. Okay. Second. Yeah, we're live.
Perfect. Hi, everybody. Thank you so much today for joining us today. Sorry. My name is Alejandro, and I will be your host today for this session. Before we go deeper into it, I would like to ask you to help us go into Slido today. Maybe we can answer a few of your questions after we go into the Q&A part. So yeah, please help us scanning either the QR code or going to slido.com with the code 3636046. Today, we're going to be the CEO and co-founder at Logspend. He's ex-Spotify as well. And we're going to be hearing him about a very interesting topic, measuring success for your LLM products, large language model products. This is going to be a very interesting conversation that we're going to have today. And before moving in, I would like to just talk a little bit about myself and then a little bit about product people. I'm Alejandro. I am originally from Mexico. I'm based in Berlin, and I'm an associate product management consultant level 2 here at Product People. I have 6+ years in experience in product management and growth. I've been working in both B2C and B2B type clients. For B2C, such as FreeNow, Janssen, L'Oreal, and for B2B, Wayflyer. I have a background in business administration and data analytics as well. And as far as what product people do, the place I work for, we do interim product management, product operations, and transformation acceleration services via our in-house staff. And we also do free events and talks for one of Europe's largest PM communities with 50,000 plus members. And this is how we give back to the community. First, we will want to get to know you as well. We just released a poll in our Slido, and we would like to know from you, have you or your company ever transitioned from focusing on SMBs to enterprise customers? Yes, we're in the process now. Yes, we've already made the shift. No, but we're considering, or no, and we're not planning to do so. These are the 4 possible answers, and I will just give it 5 more seconds. And after that, without further ado, I will now let the presentation and screen go to our talker today. Victor, I will let you take the wheel.
Yeah, thank you, Alejandro. I will take over the screen and I'll share my screen. 1 second. Yeah, thanks Alejandro for passing this along. Just briefly about myself. So I'm Victor, co-founder and CEO of Logspend. We're a product analytics platform helping product teams building GenAI products essentially measure success and understand your users more deeply. So I'll be talking a bit around some of the things that we've also learned during this journey of building closely with product teams that are building AI products. And just like a little bit about myself. So I studied computer science, but I fell in love with data and AI. And so I've been doing this for over a decade. I spent the last 6 years at Spotify building data and machine learning products at scale, specifically to enable data science teams, but also enhance the user experience for hundreds of millions of Spotify users globally. I'm pretty much obsessed about data and how we can leverage that to improve products. And so I spend most of my time really supporting product teams and being a really strong ally for the product community. So as specifically for this stock, a lot of the focus would be on the later stages of going on this Gen AI journey. So we spent the last 2 years going from coming up with lots of ideas, experimenting. I know, like as PMs, you must have spent quite a lot of time pitching some of these ideas, and it's also been a lot of grassroots efforts this time around when it comes to AI adoption, which has been really cool to see. So you've come up with a lot of pilot projects. Some of them were successful, and some of them probably failed with a lot of learnings. And you were able to go to production with some of those use cases. We've seen a lot more and more of those happening lately. Um, but what we're going to be focusing on today during this talk is really moving beyond the that production stage to when things get quite serious. So where you have to demonstrate product market fit and also articulate clearly the return on investment on Gen AI initiatives that have been running for the past year or so. So at this point, what we typically see is that like the engineering team, they've been really hard at work, setting up a lot of this offline evaluations, refining the models, making sure that they actually work when they're put in front of users. We had a lot of issues with response times being really slow. The models are getting much faster. So there is a lot of iterations happening within that space around the model development space, and that's going to continue, right, for every single technology. Like it needs to grow and improve. Um, but what I tend to see is that since AI is quite technical, a lot of PMs then, get stuck in, should we? I have a lot of questions I don't have answers to. I don't really understand all of these offline evaluations and some of these operational metrics that engineers are obsessing about. And I feel like I'm a bit disconnected from my users. And, this is when you kind of feel that it is not the time to drop the ball because essentially this is one of the key steps to actually getting into that growth phase where you start to demonstrate value for your product. And so the focus here is like a complete mindset shift. Even though we're talking about AI products that is very different and less visual than what you've been used to in the past, the focus is still on the value and not the technology. The engineering teams can continue to take care of that, but you as the PM still need to be the custodian of your users, thinking about your users, how they're using your product, and how you can provide real value to them. And this is something that is super important. And it's not any different from what you've been doing previously. So when you think about your typical web mobile experiences, you have always thought about the data, right? You've observed how your users have leveraged the product, and this is exactly what needs to happen. You need to interpret the actions that your users are taking, and not only focus on getting qualitative feedback through surveys and like user interviews. And so, like the big shift happening here when it comes to Gen AI is that qualitative data is becoming more important than it used to be in the past. Just because previously we had full control over the experience, and we generated lots of event data that drove all of the engagement metrics that we rely on today. When we talk about DAUs, MAUs, retention curves, they're relying a lot on this event-driven data, right? But with Gen AI and with this, with a lot of these experiences becoming quite conversational, we have more qualitative data where actually it opens up a lot of opportunities in the sense that rather than going from I observed the behavior and I'm guessing my way through what the cause of the behavior might be, what the user intended or what they did not intend. You have a lot of breadcrumbs that your users are leaving in the qualitative data that can actually tell you exactly how they think about using your product, when they feel frustrated, why they feel frustrated. And this shift in, combining both quantitative and qualitative data to better understand your users is like a huge benefit of having like a Gen AI product actually running in front of end users. And how do you go about leveraging this? So obviously you need to start from defining the metrics, right? There's a lot of frameworks that you've probably been familiar with using from the pod. There's like the Google Heart framework, there's like Pirate metrics framework, North Star metrics, whatever it is that you use. The most important thing is that you actually define the metrics, the success metrics for your specific product. And a lot of the metrics are reusable right across products, especially when it comes to user-facing products. So we've developed a cheat sheet for given just to help you think around what kinds of metrics you should be thinking about. It's not an exhaustive list, but it does contain quite a lot to get you thinking and also get you started on this journey. I'm going to be sharing this also at the end of the call. So, and I will be talking through some of the points from this cheat sheet as well. So, we used primarily the Google Heart framework and just modified it slightly because when it comes to AI products, there's a very important element that comes into play, given the amount of control that product teams are given to the users, and that is around the safety and inclusiveness part of it. So that's an additional rubric that we've added to this framework. But when you think about happiness, really, it's the same with like how do your users actually find your AI product useful and easy to use? The same question that you typically ask, right? So a lot of the emphasis you would notice is on how you can leverage the qualitative data to really augment the quantitative data that you already have. And so you can think about signals like, thumbs up and thumbs down. This is quite a common one that has been implemented into lots of Gen AI products, and you've probably seen this with ChatGPT and a host of others. There's also like ratings, just like rating like conversations. This gives a more granular data that goes beyond like a binary metric, which means that you can kind of see like when users are super satisfied and when they're somewhat in the middle, and that can enable certain metrics that you can calculate. And then just in general, qualitative surveys and like reviews and comments that you can get from your users. Those are also things that you want to look up for when you think about happiness here. And there's quite a lot of metrics that you can use in this case, but some of the things that you want to look at is what are the proportion of sessions where there was a thumbs up, right? So that gives you a good indication, especially if you see that increasing over time. Also, when it comes to like calculating some form of NPS score for your product, that's also something that you can leverage the 5-star or 10-star rating, whatever it is that makes the most sense for you. And this gives you really like a strong sense, and you can see how there's a lot of emphasis here on the qualitative data because this is something that you can actually collect and make sense of today that was probably a bit more difficult in the past. So when it comes to engagement, because engagement is super important for Gen AI products, so retention is typically like a problem for a lot of products just because of a few factors, right? Like the technology itself, it's still continuing to improve, and so we can expect like more wow experiences over time, which means that retention can also go up. But also some of the things that we see is that like users are very quick, especially for user-facing products, right? Users have a short attention span. And so they typically want to get to the wow moment really quickly. And for Gen AI products, that's not always very obvious, right? So you need your users to stick around long enough so you can do that. So certain signals you should be looking out for here is, repeat and intense usage. You also want to see that your users are showing signs of satisfaction as they engage with the product. In conversational use cases, sometimes that is very explicit. When I use ChatGPT and I get like a very great answer, I'm super happy, and I am most likely expressing that directly in the conversation, right? And also when you see the overall sentiment of the conversation, this is not usually applicable for every single use case, but in certain use cases, it makes sense to kind of see what the overall sentiment of the conversation is, and that gives you a good indication that this conversation is going as expected. So the kind of metrics that you should be looking at when you think about engagement is the good old like DAU, weekly active users, MAUs, right? You need to have those. And you also need to see how long it's taken your users to engage. Sometimes longer is better, and sometimes longer is not really better. So in terms of like the number of messages that have been exchanged between your users and your AI assistants. And you also need to be tracking things like the percentage of sessions where users are showing signs of frustration, because obviously you want to see this really go down over time as you continue to iterate on your product. Another aspect that is super important, specifically for general products, and it's also one of the difficult ones to measure, is are my users actually getting what they want to get done? And are they doing that quickly, right? So it is very difficult just because of the nature of how these products are, right? Like it is also dependent on, sometimes the prompting skills of your end user. And, it poses a bit of a challenge. And kind of like like there's a bit of an education step that typically needs to happen, but ultimately that's still not an excuse, right? Like you still need to figure out a way to help your users get the job done really quickly. And so you want to look at signals like, okay, my users are getting the specific goals that they're trying to accomplish. They're doing it with fewer attempts, right? That's a really good thing. It means that they're able to get it done like instantly, just as you would when you click a button, right? You also want to have your assistant always providing very satisfactory answers to the users, and being able to respond as well. Because depending on this is where like some of the trade-offs around safety comes into play, where there's too much guardrails, and the assistant is kind of not having a lot of liberty in terms of expressing itself, and that translates into users being frustrated because the assistant is always saying I don't know, which is a bit annoying, from a user standpoint. So some of the metrics that you want to look at in this case is, you want to identify what those goals are that the users are trying to do in certain products. It is very obvious because you know that because the product does one or two things. And in other cases where it's like a very loose experience, you need to identify what the goals are. And this is something that you can do, like understanding, like extracting the intents from the conversations, right? Allows you to know what the specific intents are that the users are trying to do at that point in time, and then you can see how how the sessions are performing for each of those, and that gives you a good indication. You also want your assistants to respond really quickly, so that's something that you also want to keep track of. And you also want to detect when your assistants are either providing like an irrelevant response or they're not able to respond at all, because sometimes like I said, it might just be due to very strict guardrails, where in certain cases, maybe it doesn't need to be that way. And so when it comes to safety and inclusiveness, there's a few other rubrics that I'm not covering here, but you can have you can take a look at in the cheat sheet. But essentially, when it comes to safety, it is super important, right? Because users and AI, we need to interact together responsibly. And this is where some of the work that has been done in the responsible AI space is starting to bleed into actual user-facing product development, because users are able to try to abuse your product. You see that sometimes users can get frustrated and insult the assistants. So those kind of things you see, and they try to exploit vulnerabilities sometimes. So these are some of the behaviors that you're looking for to identify how you can be less flexible in certain areas, or like manage those users differently. The same for the AI assistant, right? Like it could generate harmful or toxic responses. So you need to be on the lookout for that as well, depending on how the user prompts it and gets it to hit its limit. And also when it comes to bias, right? Like, so introducing bias in the response, that's also something that you need to be on the lookout for. In certain, in some respect, right? Like if you think about it, some of these things are inherent to some of the foundational models, depending on like if the engineering team is using like a closed source solution that has been highly refined with reinforcement learning, or if it's completely free, right, in terms of the freedom it has to generate the words. There's definitely some of this effort that will be driven from the model providers like OpenAI and Anthropic and the others. And there are also certain things that as a product team, you're also able to do because essentially you're relying on these models, right? And your users are trusting that you're building the best product for them. So some of the metrics to look at here, obviously, is if you have a code of conduct for your product, that's also a good way of trying to see if the user conversations are aligning with those. Also identifying like the proportion of conversations or responses that include some kind of toxic or harmful content. You want to be driving this down over time, and the same when it comes to any form of bias like gender, race, or anything like that. So now you've defined all of these metrics, and obviously you need to set this up, which is quite challenging sometimes, especially since we're talking about qualitative data here. At Logspend, this is really what we specialize in, helping product teams really leverage this kind of data. And so what you need to think about is, when is this relevant really? Like, because a lot of teams actually do just rely on like the quantitative metrics. And I think that could take you, it could take you at least at the early stages of the journey, right? But obviously you're leaving a lot on the table, right? And which means that that's also, you're not going to be as fast as you expect to be. So having this experimentation mindset and using that is key to leveraging this, because that generates a lot of curiosity for you to obsess so much about your product that you really want to understand what your users are saying. And so just being able to generate hypotheses and ideas to test out, learning from those and continuing to do that iteratively is how you actually iterate towards like a great product when it comes to AI. And this is also, not anything new, right? This is what we have always done when it comes to like any other experiences we've built in the past. The teams that have built the best experiences, think about products like Spotify, Netflix. This has been because of some obsessive experimentation culture and iterating really rapidly around what the users are doing. And this is the same mindset that you need to bring in when it comes to leveraging this metrics. And you also need to bring everyone along, right? So it is not enough to just look at the metrics yourself as a product manager. You need to bring the rest of the team along on this journey. So pushing that that metrics driven culture, creating some kinds of reports, dashboards that can be used both for reporting purposes, but also to spark curiosity and spark conversations around how certain like items on the roadmap are important, and why they need to be focused on. Like, this is something that you really want to do. And with Logspend, that's also something that we do, enable you build this report and have that shared with different stakeholders internally and externally. So I will stop there. And like I said, like there's the cheat sheet. You can go ahead and just like get a copy for yourself, and leverage that and do that exercise, of trying to define exactly what metrics you need to focus on, and then prioritizing those metrics, and then getting those set up. Also super happy to, as you start doing this exercise, if you want to bounce ideas, or you're probably thinking through how you can apply that for your specific use case, we're more than happy to spend some time with you and help you talk through how you can do that, regardless of the solution you end up using to implement this.
Amazing. Thank you so much. I will now start sharing my screen really quickly, just for everybody to see our Q&A link. Sorry, Victor, could you help me stop sharing your screen?
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I was just, yeah.
No worries. I think it should be this one. Perfect. So really quickly, again, thank you everybody for listening in. Please share your questions with us using the QR code that you're looking at right now, or going into slido.com with the code 3636046. I will talk a little bit more about Product People, what we do. And if you feel like you're missing the QR code, no worries. On top of the slides that are coming in, you will see still the Slido code for asking more questions, for us to have Victor answer a few more things for today. So the use cases that we do at Product People, and how what are the situations that we engage with clients, are interim or fractional product managers or product leaders. We do permanent position covers while you're hiring, as this often takes 3 to 9 months to hire a new a complete new role for companies. We do parental leave covers for 3 to 12 months. And important and urgent initiatives where you need to drive a product discovery or delivery, build MVPs, develop strategy and road mapping, etc. We also do product coaching and consulting for cases such as even program management or product operations. We do coach for a product management team. We appraise the skills and set up personal development plans. We create and streamline processes and programs from 0 to 1 in hypergrowth or at scale. We do as well product discovery, discover the next impactful initiative or product within the client's company, and run a low or no-code pilot, or an MVP, basically, which goes into discovering, ideating, aligning with the team, and run and kicking off the next iteration. Here are a few selected B2C clients that we've worked with in the past, as well as a few selected B2B clients that we've also worked in the past with. Product People stats, we have 300 cross-functional teams supported as of today, 7+ clients from Series A startups to publicly listed companies. We have 42 product leaders and product managers in-house at full time to ensure quality of service for our clients and a strong career development path for our team members. And 62% of all of the team are women, and 60% are in leadership. So we have a strong bias to promote from within as well our firm, and attract more women than the industry average is, thanks to our skills before CVs hiring process. And we're back to the QA. I will let the Slido go in. And another thing that I will remind everybody is that if you're visiting us from LinkedIn, you can just comment on the post. We will be reading those and start relaying your questions to Victor. I see already we have our first question for Victor, and this would be: how do you ensure that the data collected for an AI product is clean, reliable, and representative of the problem that you're solving?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely like one of the most important aspects of this, right? Because at the end of the day, everything that we're doing is really centered around the data. I mean, I think it is one of the things that we've seen that has been quite helpful is the sort of standardization that we're seeing across the different API providers. in terms of how they send responses for the LLM calls. So that's been used quite helpful to standardize how you do this across multiple providers if you're in a if you're running different models within your environment. So still going through the whole data cleaning, understanding what the different data fields are, and ensuring that those are being propagated correctly. This is standard practice that is also to be done. So you definitely need to build your data pipelines to ensure that data is being cleaned and transformed in the right way if needed, to make sure that the data that you're leveraging for the insights can be actually trusted.
Got it. Thank you. Next question. What role does user feedback play in the data collection process for AI products?
Yeah, user feedback is super important as well. I think the way that we see this is that we've typically seen anywhere between 1% to 3% in terms of data volumes for the user feedback. So in certain cases, it does create a bit of a bias in terms of what you see, because most likely, like, users that are leaving feedback are either very satisfied or very dissatisfied, right? And so you don't really have a good view on your users overall, as you would when they're actually in the process of getting a job done and interacting with your product, right? So that's the highest fidelity you can get. But user feedback is also super important. And there are other forms of user feedback, right? That is not necessarily explicit feedback. It could also be other event sources that you already have, like if you're tracking some kind of conversion event, it's also user feedback, right? Like if a user converted, then that's something that's super interesting for you to track, and that's super useful as well. And that doesn't really suffer that much from the bias that comes with explicit user feedback.
Amazing. Actually, this is a great segue into our next question. One of the users at Slido, Pete, asked, what is the advantage of tracking implicit feedback from the user messages versus explicit feedback, let's say through thumbs up?
Yeah, I guess it's that's exactly what the advantage is. There is like you get rid of a lot of the bias within the data, because sometimes, I mean, you look at the explicit feedback and you have a lot of negative feedback, or you have a lot of positive feedback. I mean, it's good for you to know that you have very happy users, but being able to extract that directly from the conversations gives you even higher fidelity, right? Because then you have a really good view of the user distribution that you have.
Amazing. Thank you. Now, switching up the gears a bit, another user asked, can you share examples of summarizing qualitative data into actionable steps for a product?
Yeah. So yeah, that's definitely like the biggest challenge, right? Because when you think about like quantitative data, it is usually things that you can count easily, right? So like the mental model that you have for those is very straightforward, and I don't think anyone really wants to sit through, combing through, like hundreds of thousands or millions of user conversations. Probably want to do something else. The way that we've seen this play out is that there's definitely not just one way of doing this. There's different ways of looking through the data, extracting signals, specific signals. I mentioned, thinking about goal completion. So, say your product is focused on, I don't know, like answering questions like an FAQ chatbot, for example. So if a user got an answer to the question or to the questions that they had, they actually achieved the goal that they came to do. So if you measure that, then you can connect that, and that goes from being like qualitative feedback that you then transform into like the mental model that you're used to consuming, right? Which is something you can count, and then that becomes that, right? It becomes a metric you can track that is as close to binary as possible. So that's one way of doing that. Another way of doing that is also segmenting based on the types of conversations. One of the things that we've seen when it comes to conversational experiences is that, like users tend to have really long conversations that span multiple, months. And so being able to identify like what each session was in there, like what exactly the user was trying to do then, and then looking at those types of conversations and seeing how they behave. You typically would find specific types of questions or types of conversations that drive better, higher engagement or better results. And you can just double down on those versus others where you also need to, lean in and understand exactly what went wrong. That could be just combing through like a very small subset of the conversations, right? Rather than trying to find the needle in the haystack. So these are some of the ways that you can leverage it. And this goes back to what I said previously. It all boils down to an experimentation mindset. If you don't have that, or you're not in a position where like actually iterating and improving on your product is super important, then you're not going to have enough curiosity to ask those questions or try to find those. So this is kind of how you need to like position that mindset, have that, and then go ahead to really explore the data in different ways.
Thank you so much, and I love the first part of your response, because this relates to one of the things that you were mentioning in your presentation, right? Measuring how quickly one of your users actually gets to answer whatever they wanted to ask in the first place, like the minimum amount of steps and questions that a user has to go through before achieving what they were asking in the first place. That is also something that can become a metric, right? And that's very interesting. It is an interesting concept that I will surely ask you further. Another question, and actually our final question for today, is how do you balance innovation in AI with increasing regulations on data privacy and security, such as, GDPR and CCPA?
Yeah. I must say that's a huge challenge, right? Especially just with the speed of iteration that is needed, just to get these products to really work. I think it is definitely tough, but it is completely doable. I think that it is like there's a bit of trade-off in terms of, I mean, we've seen different ways that we can leverage data without necessarily needing to have all the information about like users to the specific detail, right? So like masking some of the information, but without losing the meaning of the data is these are things that are completely possible. And so like just leveraging those kind of techniques are super important for you to continue to iterate rapidly in the face of regulation, right? But to be fair, I mean, like it's definitely going to slow things down a bit. But I think it's also important to think about user safety and making sure that users can actually trust the product, which is also, a core part of activation. Because if users don't trust it, your activation metric is just going to be really shit. So you need to really balance this out and really think about the users and make sure that your users know that you're putting their safety first. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Victor. Thank you. Yeah, I cannot thank you any much more for this session. It was a very interesting topic. I will definitely follow up with you. I would love to connect with you, not only on LinkedIn, but also let's keep chatting. We will also now go into a few more slides too. Actually, I would like to announce the rest of the things that we have for the audience today. Two things. Please, if you like to, subscribe to our newsletter. You can receive inspiring product stories and insights in your inbox. And by the way, we're hiring. We always need a few more working hands to help our clients discover and deliver great products faster. Therefore, yes, please do scan, if you want, each of these QR codes. And for next week, we will be talking, actually, Shitan will be talking to us, Shitan Pandya, SVP Product Growth at Dason Group. He will be letting us know about the commercial-minded product manager. This is coming up next, and this is going to be a very interesting topic to go through as well. And with this, let me just quickly go back to these two QR codes. With this, I thank everybody who has been listening to us on this live stream. I thank again Victor for your kind words today and a very interesting topic. And that is it. And have a really nice Tuesday, everybody, and have a great rest of the week.
Yeah, thanks for having me.